This video is going to be taking a look at the extended arc plotline of the X-Files, episodes that are not standalone or Monster of the Week episodes. While they can be interesting and are still well worth watching, they don't really add anything to the story and as a result don't require any brushing up on. Here's a recap of the first season. Dana Scully, an agent of the FBI, is brought before a council of higher-ups that incidentally includes this man, but we'll get back to him later. Scully is asked to chronicle and debunk the work of Fox Spooky Mulder, who earned this nickname because, despite his impeccable investigative talent, he has what some call an obsession with the paranormal. His work is called the X-Files, FBI files that involve unexplainable phenomenon. The first case that the two co-investigate sends them to Belflor, Oregon, where some strange events have led to the death of 4 victims. The two experience turbulence on their flight as well as some radio interference while driving in Belflor, but
probably not.
Mulder arranges to exhume the body of the 3rd victim, Ray Soames, in order to look for a peculiar chemical compound found not only on the 4th and latest victim, but on victims of similar deaths across the country that all came with peculiar markings. However, instead of finding a human, the body of an orangutan is found inside the coffin. What's even more strange is that an unidentifiable metal implant is found inside of the orangutan's nose. Mulder and Scully visit the psychiatric ward that Soames occupied just before his death and discover 2 of his classmates, one in a vegetative state and another, Peggy O'Neill, who enters a panic state that exposes a familiar sight. Mulder asserts his belief that the victims in this case, as well as those around the country, were actually alien abductees, but Scully isn't convinced. They investigate the woods where bodies have been turning up but are forced to leave by local authorities. Scully comments on a grainy substance found all over the crime scene. Mulder returns the 2 of them to the location where they experienced radio interference and, following a flash of light at 9:03 p.m., find that 9 minutes have turned up missing. Mulder sheds some light on why he's so passionate about the X-Files by revealing a personal motive, the unexplained disappearance of his sister when he was 12 that he attributes to an alien reduction. He also says that there are X-Files even he can't get a hold of because the government refuses to authorize their disclosure. Peggy O'Neill is hit by a car and killed, with the driver saying that she ran out in front of him. This strikes the agents as odd given that she needed a wheelchair. Perhaps more odd, her time of death was 9:03 p.m. While at the crime scene, they are alerted that the autopsy lab containing the orangutan body was subject to arson and that the body was stolen. All the evidence accumulated so far was subsequently destroyed. Teresa Nemens, a classmate of the victims, comes forward and tells the agents that she will sometimes find herself in the woods with no memory of how she got there, and that she isn't the only one. The agents decide to look at the graves of the first 2 victims, only to discover that they've already been dug up. Mulder's new theory involves the other patient from the psychiatric ward, Billy Miles, whose feet happen to have the same grainy substance as from the woods. Returning there to collect an official sample for comparison, they again find the sheriff, who happens to be Billy's father. Mulder witnesses some sort of ritual take place but appears incomplete as Billy snaps out of his state. Billy testifies that he was subjected to orders from something beyond him, something that told him to bring his friends forward for tests, but the government officials didn't seem convinced. Scully presents the object pulled from the orangutan as the only survivable piece of evidence. The man from earlier, who is subsequently known as the cigarette-smoking man, is seen putting the object away in the Pentagon. Mulder later informs her that their work on the case has vanished, as though it didn't exist. In Idaho, an airplane pilot goes missing following a psychotic breakdown that resulted in hospitalization. His wife reports the government, claiming that they kidnapped him. His file is deprioritized without an investigation, leading to Mulder picking it up. He shares his findings with Scully and while using the restroom is confronted by a seemingly well-intentioned man who urges Mulder to drop the case, claiming that an FBI investigation will not be tolerated. The man appears to vanish before Mulder can confront him further. Scully believes Mulder is withholding information about the case from her and says so on the phone when Mulder realizes he is under surveillance. The agents travel to Idaho and ask questions to the wife of the pilot, who says that he has been developing a rash over the past 2 years as well as increasing and unusual behavior. She also says that her husband was not the only one to exhibit a trend like this and directs them to a friend of hers whose husband did come back. While attempting to question a colonel about the initial pilot's disappearance, the agents are approached by a neighbor who directs them to a supposed UFO nut in town. Mulder asks this apparent believer where he might spot a UFO himself and winds up at a military base not featured on USGS maps. Staking out the place until night, the agents find themselves audience to 2 large unidentifiable bodies of light in the sky. The lights disappear and a helicopter follows, appearing to chase 2 young intruders. The agents help them evade discovery and afterwards they say that they regularly sneak in through a hole in the base fence and that this activity is common, but Scully doesn't buy into any of it. The missing pilot that they are investigating returns home but is unable to answer a question he should have knowledge of. Mulder believes his brain has been rewired somehow. While driving, the agents were apprehended by other government agents who ransack their belongings and escort them back to their motel, where they are expected to pack and leave immediately. Mulder believes that the helicopter was looking for them, that their intentions were already known, and that the pilot had been returned as a decoy. Mulder leaves Scully without saying where to and enlists help from the intruders to locate the hole in the base's fence. He treks far inside and waits until night again, only this time he is able to see an aircraft up close. He is caught and injected with something. He He then finds himself inside of a highly unusual facility before something is put into his eye. Meanwhile, Scully finds that the phone lines are down and again runs into the helpful neighbor from earlier, only it becomes apparent now that he works for the government. He takes her to Mulder at gunpoint, who then asks,
"How did I get here?"
They try to follow up with the wife of the missing pilot but are turned away. The entire mission winds up inconclusive and unsatisfactory. Mulder is approached by a familiar face, a man known only as Deep Throat, who says that he will offer help in the future and before leaving also says,
"They've been here for a long time."
A surveillance team detects an unidentified flying object crash in Wisconsin, but the team is told to report that it was simply a meteor picked up by instrument malfunction. The people in the surrounding area are told that the presence of toxic material requires their immediate evacuation, but Deep Throat tips Mulder off that something more is going on. Mulder sneaks onto the site and photographs a questionable operation, but is discovered and placed in an on-site cell where he meets Max, a member of the group called Nightcap. He naps and wakes to find Scully, who believes the site to have been a cover-up for a Libyan air fighter, as the government now suggests. Mulder returns home to find it broken into by Max, who says that Nightcap has been following him for some time now. Max shows him and Scully recording from a police broadcast of an officer that was murdered on site the night of the crash. They seek out the wife of the officer, who says that her husband's body is being kept by the government. A doctor from the hospital that the officer went to says that the government threatened him and that the officer suffered from intense burns the night of the crash before being taken away. Mulder goes to see Max and notices an incision he's seen twice before, on two women 1,000 miles apart that both claimed to be abducted by aliens and had never met each other before. An entity from the crash attacks officers at the site and then goes after Max, who despite Mulder's intentions winds up gone. After the events, Mulder is put under investigation with threat of the X-Files closing. However, the cigarette-smoking man steps in to prevent the termination of Mulder, stating that he would be far more dangerous if not employed by the government. An Iraqi fighter pilot shoots down a UFO. In Tennessee, a truck driver experiences electrical failure as a different UFO flies overhead. The driver is arrested with Mulder and Scully heading out to question him, but before further investigation can occur, the agents are demanded to leave by the local authorities without explanation. Mulder takes Scully with him to see a group of conspiracists called the Lone Gunmen. The agents return to FBI headquarters where Scully realizes they've been bugged. Mulder arranges to meet with Deep Throat, who gives them documentation of what happened with the fighter pilot. Scully then discovers that the truck driver lied about both what his truck was carrying and his identity, with Mulder theorizing that he was carrying wreckage from the UFO that was shot down. They plan to intercept the truck, but before leaving, Mulder finds Deep Throat in his apartment, where he's given a photograph of a UFO that turns out to be a bust. Mulder confronts Deep Throat about this, who claims that some secrets should remain secrets, but confesses both to the forgery and that the truck driver was hauling an EBE, or extraterrestrial biological entity. Mulder finds a bug in his apartment and the agents realize that they are being separately followed, but manage to escape to Seattle where they catch up with the truck still en route to destination. They trail it for hours until running into radio interference followed by a bright light. When the light subsides, the driver is gone and so is the EBE, leaving viewers to wonder,
where did it go?
The encounter is deemed a hoax by Mulder, intended to throw them off. After following a pattern of increased UFO reportings, he determines that the EBE is actually being held at a power plant in Washington, which the two gain access to with help from the Lone Gunmen. Mulder bypasses security following a diversion, only to find Deep Throat, who calls off the guards and says that in 1947 all major nations had a secret conference agreeing that should an EBE survive a crash, the nation containing it would be responsible for its termination. He also says that he is one of 3 people to have exterminated such a creature and seeks redemption through aiding Mulder in his work. Mulder looks at the containment unit for the EBE and finds it empty. Mulder is left uncertain about how much, if any, of what he just heard was true. Police chase a man who gets away, leaving an odd trail. Deep Throat brings the case to Mulder's attention. Scully warns that Deep Throat has lied before, but Mulder is determined to find something of importance. The agents discover the car of the fugitive has been replaced with an imposter, the real car having belonged to a doctor in Maryland. Mulder decides to visit his housekeeper when Scully tells him that he's gone to the point of delusion, that she believes Deep Throat is feeding into an obsession in order to humor Mulder. He reaches out to Deep Throat and tells him that they've been playing by his terms for too long, who responds by saying that Mulder has never been closer, but won't say to what. Police call off the search for the fugitive who had been breathing underwater evading them. The doctor from earlier, Dr. Berube, is killed by a man in a suit, but it is staged as a suicide. Scully takes a liquid from the scene and has it analyzed when Mulder breaks into Berube's house and receives a call from the fugitive, who collapses on the other end. He realizes that he isn't alone. The fugitive is taken into an ambulance where an injection causes a lethal gas to emit from his body. Mulder, having found keys to a storage facility at Berube's house, arrives at the corresponding facility to find 6 tanks, 5 with men inside and 1 empty. He flees from men who arrive at the scene. Scully learns the bacteria taken from the doctor's sample doesn't exist anywhere in nature, which means that it is actually
extraterrestrial.
The next morning, the agents return to the storage facility where Scully admits that she was wrong and that she should have more faith in Mulder by now. After this touching moment, they head inside to find not tanks, but Deep Throat, who confirms that experiments had been being conducted on terminally ill volunteers with alien DNA, and that one was successful, so successful that it escaped with newfound superhuman abilities. Scully is told that the doctor who had been assisting her with the bacteria died in a car crash. Mulder finds the fugitive in Berube's attic and offers protection when he's ambushed and taken prisoner. Deep Throat alerts Scully of this being a possibility and says that while Mulder is too high profile to be killed, a trade might be possible if he can get her inside of a Maryland facility in order to steal alien tissue collected decades ago. Her cover is almost blown when asked for a password, but she reflects on something familiar.
Purity control.
She finds what she is looking for and Deep Throat arranges a trade. Mulder is released, but at a cost. Deep Throat leaves some infamous words that will stay with the agents for the remainder of their lives.
Trust no one.
Mulder recovers and informs Scully that the X-Files are being shut down, but that he can't give up, not as long as the truth is out there. And that's what you missed on the X-Files.